as we welcome one of the most distinctive voices of the 80s. Mick Hucknell of Simply Red is joining us. How are you, Mick?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. You've been such a big part of my record collection for a long time.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. It's very nice to talk to you.
And of course, you're here talking about new material, which is always such a treat. Brand new album, which is out now. And a first single, Better With You. Tell us a little bit about the process of writing it. I don't know if we're out of the COVID cycle yet. Lots of artists I've been talking to over the last 12 months wrote their most recent albums in peculiar circumstances because of lockdown. Was that the case with this one?
Yeah, all the songs were written on an acoustic guitar. Right. And I just found myself during lockdown strumming and watching TV. And I just started writing songs. I'd not really planned to make an album. It just kind of happened. And is it unusual for you to do it in that way, just to be just yourself strumming away and recording, or would you be more accustomed to being in a studio with other musicians? Well, that's exactly right. You described it very well. It was strange because we couldn't. During lockdown, it was very difficult to sit in a room with musicians. No one was allowed to move. But I developed a system with my producer, Andy, where on a Friday morning, we would meet at my house and I'd show him the song and we'd get down a rough structure and then he would take it away and create some kind of image for it. Right. And then we would start working more in detail. So we sort of did like a song a week and just took it from there, really. That's quite disciplined, to sort of think, right, we'll try and get through. I mean, you must have come up with a lot more songs than you needed. Not really, no. I mean, I had a week to write and they were just flowing, it just was happening. And it just was a perfectly natural kind of experience. Okay, well, let's listen to the new single right now. Just Like You, this is Simply Red. Come on. That's the fabulous new single from Simply Red, Just Like You, from the new album, Time. And you're taking it out on the road. Your first gig is 5th of June at the Shepherd's Bush Empire. What's your sort of decision-making process behind where you do a show? Is it just logistical, what's available kind of thing? Or did you want something... Because that's not the biggest arena. You could have filled that 20 times over. Why choose somewhere as intimate as that? Well, we just... we needed to have a warm-up show under our belt. We've got a new keyboard player. And it was wise for us to do some warm-up shows. We're doing one at the Shepherd's Bush, which is really just for the kind of hardcore fans. So it's not the same set as we're going to be performing in the summer in the outdoor festivals. Right. But we just wanted to just warm up, and we're going to play selected songs for the kind of hardcore fans. And then we do another proper warm-up show actually in Dubai. Okay. And then we get out and hit the road in June, July, early August, throughout mainland Europe. And wow, it's a packed old schedule, as you say, lots of outdoor festivals, Italy, Germany, France, Switzerland, Belgium, Austria, Spain. But you're not going to do a big UK tour until is it next year or the year after? Well, we were in the UK last year and... you can't just keep touring all the time. People get sick of you. So, I've always loved that thing. How can I miss you when you won't go away? So, in 2025, it will be our 40th anniversary. Oh, yeah. So it seems appropriate to wait until 2025 and celebrate that. It's a phenomenal achievement, and it's there have been quite a few 40s, 50s. I think we've even had one 60th anniversary coming through the doors as we've had these lovely, great conversations. And there's a real sense of pride in hitting that mark. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of marriages don't last that long. It's pretty rare for bands to be able to stay together that long, albeit they might have had breaks along the way. To what do you owe your longevity?
That's a really good question. First of all, I'm thankful that I'm still alive, because so many of my contemporaries aren't.
Yeah.
Which is very sad. But I'm just lucky, I guess. I'm lucky. I can still sing, and my voice is still intact, and ever more fortunate that I'm still able to love my profession, and I'm still being creative. I'm still coming up with ideas for songs, and I'm just busy doing my job, which I really love. I love my job.
Well, listen, as we do on this show, Mick, we'd like to sort of do a little fleeting flight of stepping stones, your musical memories and influences. Generally speaking, the first question that we ask is if you can remember the first single you ever bought.
It was when I was 11 years old, and I'd been saving up. I used to deliver newspapers as a kid and deliver milk, so I saved up money from that to buy a record player. And I bought 2 double albums, which are the Beatles. They did a compilation album of 62 to 66 and 67 to 70.
Right.
So I called them the red and blue albums. They're 2 double albums. And I bought those with my record player and played them to death. So those were the 2 records I bought.
I think I'm gonna be sad. She's got a
Ticket to Ride, the Beatles, featuring on the double albums purchased by a hard-working young Mick Hucknell, doing his paper round not just to earn the money for the records, but to buy the record player too, eh? Are you listening, kids? That's how it's done. And we'll be back to hear where the journey that began with a paper round took a young Mick Hucknell next. Welcome back to the evening show with Jackie Brambles, where it's just you, me, and our very special guest, Mick Hucknell, cozying on in for a great conversation and a meander through his musical memories. Before the break, we heard how you saved up money from your paper round and your milk round to buy not just your first records, but your own record player. Kids listening today, Mick, you'd had a milk round. They wouldn't know what that was. A milk round. What's that? Somebody actually turns up at 4 o'clock in the morning and puts a bottle of milk on your step, and a paper round. So you obviously had a bit of graft about you from a very young age.
Well, I was very lucky that I always had a bit of money in my pocket because I worked. So, I'd go to school, and then when I came home from school, I'd go to the newsagents, pick up my bag and deliver all these newspapers, and did that for several years. And then I got promoted to collecting the newspaper money on a Friday night. So I got more wages for that.
Right.
So, and then with all that money, all those millions of pounds, I would go on a Saturday morning and go and buy records. I'd go and buy usually 1 or 2 singles on a Saturday morning. So every week I'd have a new record to play in my brand new record player.
I love that. Oh, that's fantastic. And what about as you got a bit older? I mean, for an 11-year-old, that's pretty sophisticated to go out and get 2 Beatles double albums and obviously have that being the first part of your musical education. What about as you became a teenager? Did your taste progress? What did you move on to from there?
I was really into the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And the next album I bought was an album called Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones.
Oh.
But singles-wise, strangely, I used to buy a lot of Tamla Motown.
Ah.
And so on. It was a mixture between the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Tamla Motown. So between about sort of 11 and 14, I was buying mostly soul singles.
Right.
I got hold of some Otis Redding things as well, and Stax. I still got some of these records now, actually.
sitting in the morning sun, wasting time.
Otis Redding, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, got to number 3 in 1968. Do you remember the first gig of note that you would have gone to see and how old you would have been?
Well, this is a strange one because I can't remember who took me. I'm racking my brains, but I went to see the Rolling Stones at a place called the King's Hall.
Wow.
In Bellevue.
Right.
Bellevue was this kind of almost like a theme park in a weird way. It had a big wheel, and it was famous for the tallest used to call them the Bobs. And these Bobs got sent over. A rich Texan bought the Bobs.
Right.
And shipped them over to Texas, which was kind of crazy.
Sad.
But anyway, there was a venue there called the King's Hall, and the Rolling Stones played there, and it was incredible. I mean, I think I was like 12.
So somebody took you, obviously.
Yeah, I can't remember who the hell took me, and it was just fantastic. I just remember being surrounded by old people compared to me, and it was an absolute thrill to do that. You know, to be there so young. It was really an experience.
Was it that sort of just complete joy that you were just a part of this big heaving mass, or was there any part of your brain at that point that was saying, "I want to be up there. That's what I want to do"?
That's a great question. That didn't really occur to me until the whole punk thing began.
Right.
And when I went to see the Buzzcocks and the Sex Pistols and bands like that, because you know they weren't what I might describe as very professional. You know, they looked like they'd just started playing their instruments, and
yeah,
you sort of thought, well, wow, I could do that.
Yes.
You know, and so then again, with the money that I made from doing my jobs, I saved up and bought an acoustic guitar, and then slowly learnt to play an acoustic guitar, and the rest is history.
Number 12 in 1978. So seeing bands like the Buzzcocks and the whole punk movement sort of gave you permission, really, to dream that maybe this could be your path forward. When did you first have a sense that you had something a bit special with your voice? When did you first notice that people were looking at you in a certain way when you opened your mouth and started to sing?
Well, that would come from my late friend and mentor, a gentleman by the name of Roger Eagle. Now, Roger ran a club in Liverpool called Eric's.
Oh, yeah, legendary.
This place, the Sex Pistols played there. I think U2, their very first gig they did on the mainland in the UK, I believe, was at Eric's.
Right.
And Roger introduced me to a lot of rhythm and blues singers because he thought that I had the voice. And that was the first time I sort of thought, well, you know, because the band I had, the Frantic Elevators, when we first started out, it was just very kind of shouty, kind of punky, shouty sort of things.
Yeah.
And I just started to go back to more melodic music that I'd been listening to before punk, and then just started to try and sing like Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin, and I was just listening to them. And so towards the end of the Frantic Elevators, my first band, we started to get less punky and more melodic.
Mm.
And we'd do songs like Gin House Blues and Don't Let Me Down by the Beatles and stuff like that. And that was when I really started to push the melodic side of my singing ability, you know. So it came from there, really, over a period of 2 or 3 years.
And when you were starting to get a bit of traction and you know, there was a bit of buzz forming, before we, the general public, ever saw you on like Top of the Pops or anything like that, who would have been in your ether, in your sort of, who would be your contemporaries to your right and left, who were all sort of surging towards breaking through together?
Well, they were a bit ahead of me, actually. And the one I looked to very much so was George Michael, who, when he broke away from Wham, I think you really started to see that he was a good singer, you know, and a special talent.
Yeah.
But I remember getting into a bit of trouble. My first experience with the press was unfortunate. It was a bit of a learning curve. The journalist asked me a question, said, well, who do you think your contemporaries are? And I said, probably George Michael and Lisa Stansfield. And then I said, well, do you know a better singer? Asking them a question. So they lifted that phrase out.
Yeah.
Well, do you know a better singer? as if to say I said that I'm the best singer
Singer.
and no one else knows, and that was very upsetting actually, because it was very unfair.
I'd say love was a magical flame, and we never would have met.
Oh my God, what a voice. A Different Corner, number 1 in 1986 for George Michael. Much respected and admired by our special guest tonight, his contemporary Mick Hucknell. But his words about that were twisted in the tabloids, and we'll continue that conversation about the repercussions of that coming up next. Welcome back to the evening show with Jackie Brambles, where tonight our very special guest, Mick Hucknell of Simply Red, is sharing some of his most meaningful musical memories with us for our great conversation. Before the break, Mick, we were talking about the perilous interaction with the tabloid press when you're a bit of a newbie, a rookie at the game. You were completely misquoted. You talked about your contemporaries being George Michael and Lisa Stansfield, which was right at that time. But when it was printed, it had been twisted into you saying you thought you were in some way above them, which was 100% not what you had said at all.
Yeah, because a couple of years later, I met a very drunk Joe Cocker in a restaurant in Milan. And we were drinking wine with dinner, and he was drinking vodka.
Oh, wow.
And he came over to the table, and it was incredible. He was on his knees at the table. He said, "Why do you say you're the better singer?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I didn't even say it, you know."
Yeah.
It's incredible that when you become famous, you're still the guy that isn't famous.
I know.
You know, so when I first became famous, previous to that, I'd been on the dole for 4 years. And then all of a sudden, you know, Simply Red's, our first single was a hit.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I've become famous like that. And people hang you on every word you say, and you do interviews and you just think, oh, I'm just talking.
Yeah.
But then they say, you said that. I go, did I? I don't know. You know, fame really is a trip, and it takes quite a while to learn how to deal with the madness of it, actually.
And you have to learn to deal with the madness of it, or it can sort of, you know, finish you off. But in many ways, the sad thing about it is that means getting your guard up. You have to have your guard up. You have to be careful what you say.
Yeah, you get misquoted, you get misinterpreted, and it hurts.
Yeah.
You know, it hurts. It physically and mentally hurts. So then you have to toughen up, and you have to start getting experience in how you deal with people that don't necessarily have your interests at heart.
Let's talk about growth as an artist, particularly as a songwriter. Which of your own songs holds the most significance for you?
It would have to be Holding Back the Years. As I described to you earlier, when I bought my first acoustic guitar, I'd only learnt like 2 or 3 chords. And Holding Back the Years was the second song I wrote. So I was 17. I'm in my dad's house in Denton, in East Manchester, and I'm strumming away in my bedroom, and I came up with that song. So, you know, that song, even though that wasn't our very first hit, Money's Too Tight to Mention was our first hit, but I didn't write that. So Holding Back the Years is of deep significance to me on many levels, because especially it's very autobiographical, about growing up with my father and just me and my dad. And it's also, you know, at 17, you have an age where you're still at home, but there's something telling you that you're going to leave. There's something, you're somehow getting ready to break out.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, I want to hold on to my childhood. I want to hold on to all the experiences I've had so far, but yet something is telling me to move on. Something's telling me I have to leave and go away.
Yeah.
So this song will always be the most significant song to me.
Holding back the years. Well, I wasted all my
What about
that a significant memory for you of the first time a peer of yours came up to you and said something very affirming about your music?
Early on in my career, we got to open for James Brown.
Oh, wow.
Who I completely adored and idolised and still do. I always say to people, I've got 74 singles by James Brown, and I've got 35 albums by James Brown. So I think it's fair to say I'm a fan.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were doing the support act for James at the Hammersmith Apollo, and I'm there on the stage, and I look over to my left side, and at the side of the stage, James is watching us with his curlers in. He's got, you know, women wear the curlers and stuff.
Yeah.
He's got curlers in with this kind of hat thing on. Women would know what that is. I don't quite know.
Yeah, it's probably blowing hot air into it or something, like a big sort of...
But it was really hard to concentrate because I'm looking over and think James Brown's standing there with rollers in and a hat, some sort of hat thing on. And I thought, and I'm supposed to be singing here, you know. But I met James again throughout my career 2 or 3 times. And he actually was, he really liked us, actually. So, you know, it was fantastic to be recognised by somebody that you admired so much.
Fellas, I'm ready to get up and do my thing. Go ahead. I want to get into it, man. Get on up. Get up. Get on up. Get up.
James Brown, Get Up Like a Sex Machine, originally a hit from 1970 and again in 1991. Final question then, and it's one we ask everybody, and it's not to ask you of your favourite song. That would be crazy, but it is a particular song that you revisit on a fairly regular basis because you know it's guaranteed to put you in a particular space that you're seeking. What would that be for you?
It's a tough one, that. When I was asked, I thought, well, how the hell do you answer that with all the wonderful music that there is out there? Mm. And I guess I would, it would be a choice between 2 songs. It would either be Life on Mars by David Bowie. Or My Way by Frank Sinatra. So I'll give you the choice of the 2. The David Bowie song, in fact, they're connected, these songs, because apparently they're the same chord progression.
Oh, that's interesting.
David Bowie was very significant to me early on in my career. You know, I mentioned earlier the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, but a friend of mine who has since passed, Christian, I remember a Saturday morning, he'd just been out and bought Ziggy Stardust. Mm. Now, I know that Life on Mars is not on Ziggy Stardust, it's on the previous album, Hunky Dory.
Yeah.
But it was like the world discovered David Bowie via Ziggy and Starman.
Yeah.
And they then released Life on Mars again, and it became a hit after Ziggy. Yeah. If my memory serves me correctly. But I think that Life on Mars is a work of genius. So those are the songs I would choose. I listened to Sinatra's My Way actually yesterday, and it's magical.
It is.
His voice is almost breaking, like he's almost on the verge of crying, but the atmosphere in it is just extraordinary.
And now the end is near.
It's been such a pleasure to catch up with you, Mick. Best of luck with the tour and with the album and the single. I know you're not going to need it, but I hope you get to enjoy being back out on the road.
Can I just say, I just hear little tinges of a Scottish accent emerging from your voice. It's probably living up there that's done it. You're picking it up. You're picking up the twang.
Well, I've been up here on and off most of my life, so yes. And I've got I'm married to a Scotsman, and I've got 2 Scottish teenagers. So when I'm shouting, there's a bit of a twang.
Well, I had a Scottish grandmother, and I wore a kilt to my wedding, so we've got something in common there.
I love that, Mick. It's been so lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You take care.
Mick Hucknell of Simply Red. What a legend.